You have made it just in time. Your go-to podcast for all things e-commerce logistics.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of our Just in Time podcast. My name is Petra. I'm the co-founder of Byrd, and I'm here today with Arne, founder and CEO of Parcel Perform. And we're going to be talking about the post-purchase experience and how we can basically improve the experience of the consumer to ideally create loyal and returning customers. So welcome to the podcast, Arne.
Hi, Petra. Thanks for having me. I'm very much looking forward to this conversation.
Great. Anne, maybe we can just start right away with a little bit of information about you and your background, right? I think it's important to create a picture, right? Why are you the expert on the post-purchase experience? Maybe just a brief sentence also about what Parcel Perform does. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay, sure. So I've been within e-commerce and e-commerce logistics for the past 12 years. I'm based out of Singapore, but I think I've been working in e-commerce globally. First of all, starting Zalora, which is a fashion e-commerce business in Southeast Asia, and then moving into the logistics space with Singapore Post, DHL e-commerce before starting Parcel Perform together with my co-founder about 10 years back. Because what we realized is that a lot of merchants want to work with multiple logistics partners for their e-commerce delivery business, and you need to have a platform that helps them to have a good post-purchase experience across all their partners. And I think there was a gap in the market that we as Parcel Perform try to fill. And we've built the business globally now, and we have learned a lot along the way. I'm happy to share more insights over this call.
Yeah, I think those are always the best insights, kind of the learnings and the practical examples. So I'm looking forward to those. And I'm particularly interested in this session because, as part of our podcast, we touch different topics along the logistics and e-commerce fulfillment journey. And I think the post-purchase experience actually gets overlooked quite often. And I looked at some data and some studies around the topic. And I think what's especially interesting is that, if you ask end consumers basically what is important to them when they buy online, they say that basically 88% of customers say that the experience is as important as the product, which I think is not too surprising, right? If you want to buy a product, but if the experience around buying it is really bad, you're probably not very happy with that experience. But then what's actually surprising is that 18% of retailers think that the post-purchase experience can be improved, which is not too much, I would say. But 93% of customers think that it can be improved. So there seems to be a huge mismatch between the perception of the retailers and the perception of the customers. So I think that's why it's super interesting to deep dive into this and also hear from you, what are the best practices? What do the best in class retailers do in terms of the process here?
No, happy to dive into this shall I start a little bit like looking back in the past, and then we can go into the best practices that have formed over time?
Yeah, sure. So I would suggest to just dive into the topic and go as the topics come up. I think what would be interesting from my point of view, maybe to start with, is how can we be proactive in this process, especially, right? Because I think that's the one key element that I understand you are also focusing on a lot. How to really make sure that we provide the information that the customer needs or might look for in the future. But yeah, sure. Just go ahead, and I'm happy to hear also maybe what you're saying about the past. I mean, I guess 10 years ago at Zalora, things were also probably still a little bit different than how they are today. So I'm super interested in all the examples.
Yeah, no, of course. When we started, obviously, it was very early days for e-commerce, and therefore, I think customers were happy if they received their product. Obviously, we moved on from there quite a bit. Initially, I think a lot of merchant thought, okay, the solution for visibility and post purchases was just sending a link to the carrier page where they can track their parcels. So that kind of gave everyone visibility, but also basically put the onus of figuring out what it means from a customer perspective on the customer. So they were meant to interpret all these like tracking data and make sense of it and figure out, oh yeah, if my parcel is here in this city today, when will it reach my doorstep? So I think this was kind of a very logistics centric way of thinking about it, not necessarily a customer centric way. And I think with us building a solution around post purchase, I think we moved on from there quite significantly. So I think right now, if we look at what's kind of the best practice around post purchase, I think the starting point is usually when the order is placed. So that's because that's when you build the expectations on what's going to happen next. So usually the merchants have a very, very sophisticated way of explaining their products, so the customer knows exactly what they're buying. They give them visibility on the price. But I think that the visibility on what's going to happen afterwards is very, very kind of limited. So some say, okay, if you find something, they say, oh, 3 to 5 business days. And then consumers have to like think about, okay, what does that actually mean? Kind of, oh yes, today included, or what happens on the weekend? Is Saturday a business day? Yes or no? So you have a lot of complex thoughts with customers, whereas as a merchant you want them to take a quick decision on buying the product, but what you do is you force that complex thought process on them, which is obviously not helpful from a conversion point of view. So what we're kind of advocating with our customers is to be very clear on the projections on okay, when is the parcel going to arrive, make that as easy and intuitive as possible. So tell them the weekday, tell them kind of how many days from now. So everyone, without like thinking too much about it, understands what's going to happen next and when the parcels are going to get there on the way. So that's the first thing. And of course, you can add different delivery options, kind of cheap and slow versus fast and expensive. I think we have all seen that. I think that gives consumers a sense of control, I think, which is important for the experience. So they know, okay, I am controlling what experience I'm going to get. So then the next step is obviously after the customer kind of completed the order is then to think about, hey, the customer is awaiting the product. They have literally a promise in mind. So I think it's what we normally advocate is for the merchant to keep the customers kind of in the loop that everything is on the right track. So which we call the happy path. So if nothing goes wrong, this is what the kind of experience is like. So what most merchants do, and I think there's a good one, is kind of when the order is shipped. So when it leaves the warehouse, because that's obviously progress. So the customer can kind of empathize with that. Okay, now it's on the way to them. I think that's a good milestone. If it takes longer than let's say 48 hours, I think we advocate to have an interim milestone so they see something is happening. Because if you don't have the delivery confirmation within that time frame, they might get a little bit worried. Kind of they don't feel like in charge, or that they're gonna get the parcel delivered on time. So I think usually, hopefully, most merchants get there by now. But nevertheless, that's the first milestone. And then I think this is a little bit kind of what we have as a golden rule. Within every 48 hours, the customer should hear kind of get a live sign of the parcel. If the transit takes longer, if it's 5 days of transit throughout the parcel journey, then I think we would suggest have an interim milestone communication saying, hey, everything is fine, it's on the way. We still believe in our promise that we've made. And then obviously the next kind of important happy path milestone, it's out for delivery, which is essentially switches for the end customer, hey, tomorrow it's going to be, or kind of today is going to be. I think a lot of that is usually already kind of done plus or minus with most of the merchants. But I think one of the very confusing factors is that there's usually two parties communicating with the customer. One is the merchant, and secondly, the carrier. They don't necessarily say the same thing. And it kind of, for example, the carrier might think about the expected delivery date differently than the merchant promise. They might actually send their notifications earlier than the merchant's notifications. So it could be that there are two different expected delivery dates are communicated. And I think that's when we get to work with our customers to really streamline that process, so that there's only one notification that is sent for every milestone. It's very consistent with the original promise, and really making sure that there's no kind of confusion that we are creating. So to give you one example, we've done an analysis for one of our customers prior to implementing our solution. They were the customer on average was receiving 8 notifications before the parcel was delivered. But only 3 from the merchant. And they thought, okay, 3 is a reasonable number, which was true. However, there were 5 that were sent from the carrier, saying very, very different things. So I think streamlining that to a kind of a more concise, more merchant-centric communication path, I think adds a lot of value and also creates a better brand experience.
Yeah. I think you're mentioning a few super interesting points. And right in the beginning, when you said, you want to be transparent, I also realized that the one thing I've seen over time quite a lot is that there used to be this super strong focus on speed of delivery. And I feel like it has shifted, and it's not really just the speed. Of course, there's a minimum speed required. But then really most customers just want to know when their parcel will arrive, right? So they don't necessarily want it to be the fastest ever, but they want to be able to plan. And I think that's where all of this proactive communication is so important, because if they cannot plan for when the parcel will arrive, they will just have a bad experience. And I think that's super interesting also to hear from your side. I think that makes a ton of sense.
And one of the things we always discuss with our customers is a little bit what kind of product is it. So depending on the product, there might be very different solutions that you want to consider. So for example, if you're ordering a sofa, it better arrive exactly on the day that they tell it. So if they show up with the sofa a day earlier, that's really unhelpful. So if you order a T-shirt, it doesn't matter. So if it's a day earlier, that's perfectly fine. But if you order something that it's time critical. For example, you're running out of coffee and you order your coffee, and you're grumpy if you don't have your coffee. So there, the delivery time frame and the speed matters a lot. Whereas if you buy something artisanal kind of item that you can only buy in one place, if it comes 3 days later, it's probably not the end of the world. So I think what we advocate is for all our customers is look at what kind of product are they sending, what kind of commodity, what is the logic they should employ to create these expectations, because I don't think there's one solution for every merchant, and even for one merchant there might be multiple products. So they're selling sofas and cushions. For the sofa, you better show up on the day. For the cushion, it doesn't matter. So I think that's where being granular and really testing out with the customer. Okay, what works best? What is the expectation that is most appreciated? I think that's a helpful journey we walk through with our customer.
Yeah. Oh, that's super interesting, and some really great examples. And you also touched upon the point of the 8 notifications. I thought that was also a good example. That leads me a bit to the topic of data, right? So if you don't know that you're sending 8 notifications, or you plus the carriers, then of course that's hard to manage better. But so which data points would you say are important to track for retailers? For me personally, it would seem like the number of notifications is a good data point, but I'm sure there's many others that are valuable to set this up properly. So do you have some examples, what you track and what is helpful?
I think what we are looking at is obviously from a carrier perspective, how many notifications are sent? Are those notifications kind of sent at the right point of time? Do they have the right pieces of information? Can we use that for our tracking experience that we're building with customers? And if you work with a dozen of different carriers because you ship to multiple markets, this is already quite a complex exercise to do, because they also will be in different languages. If you have a complex supply chain with a line haul partner and then last mile partner, that may get a little bit messier. So I think that's the first piece that we want to look at with our customers. Hey, what is the status quo, and how can we optimize that for all this kind of different groups of customers in the respective markets? What are the options, and what is a good experience? And I think we talked about the happy path. We can talk about the unhappy path a little bit later. So what does the merchant want to communicate there, and how do we make sure that only those notifications reach the customers at the right point of time? So being very granular per market, per carrier, and also potentially product, I think is very important to also be aligned throughout the process on what are the information that are being communicated, and how seamless is it from a customer perspective. Because I think the element of being seamless is important, because you build an expectation and you deliver on that expectation. At no time in this process, you should create any doubts or complexities that could kind of make the customer worry. And that's where also the carrier notification might be unhelpful, because if they communicate something that's not 100% aligned. So we had one customer where the carrier was sending, let's say, a different expected delivery date, to just then overperform. So they basically, the customer was promised it arrives on Wednesday. Then the carrier all of a sudden says, okay, Thursday, it will then be delivered on Wednesday. So when you're like, okay, you just created 2 days of which the customer was worried that they're not going to receive their order on time, and entirely unnecessarily. So because it was delivered on Wednesday. And I think this is where we put a lot of attention on the process to make it as seamless as possible for the customer, so not create any confusions, and ideally dominate this kind of experience as part of the merchant brand kind of communication, because all of these notifications are incredibly valuable from a merchant perspective for building brand, triggering upsells, because that's a way, kind of a notification that merchants open up. I think 80% of the time. They probably click it 40% of the time. And this is all traffic back to the shop, where you can promote products, where you can include helpful things to build your brand, get the customer excited. So we also say, why not use that effectively? And why also kind of share that kind of these eyeballs with the carriers in potentially confusing notifications. So I think really crafting that happy path is an important exercise for every merchant. And we put a lot of emphasis with our customers, because I think that's where a lot of value is created if you get this right. Not only by upselling a little bit, but also creating customers that are likely going to come back and have a very positive association with brand, because they give me a great product, but they also delivered on all their promises. So you remove any particular hesitation on why they would shop again.
Yeah. I think this is the most underestimated part, right? That those tracking emails are, as you said, opened 80% of the time, whereas if you send just a regular newsletter or whatever, the open rates are so much lower that, that's obviously the best opportunity to communicate with customers. And even if you're not trying to hardcore upsell, just providing additional information about the product and so on. Yeah, totally agreed. I think that's really exciting if you can really get the most out of that communication. Cool. No, that's really interesting insight. So then we touched upon it already a little bit now with basically the personalization of the post-purchase experience, right? So I think it can be super powerful. Are there some examples that you have also in terms of the personalization where you say, okay, this is a really cool cool example where a customer has used this really well, or some specific cases, maybe also where you're saying, okay, this is not a great post-purchase experience from that perspective?
No, I think where personalization really makes the biggest difference is on what we call the unhappy path, or where kind of an order is kind of experiencing some pitfalls, delivery pitfalls. Because 80% of the orders are just run through according to promise, kind of it gets delivered. There's nothing going wrong along the way, and that's what we just optimized for. I think what we discussed just now. But there are 20% of the orders where that's not the case. So either kind of it get delayed, there's something wrong, the customer was not reached at home. There was delays in the delivery process, there's many things that go wrong. I think we've identified about 25 of these potential pitfalls. And this is where I think a lot of the complexity on the post-purchase area comes from. From a merchant perspective, this is also the most important one, because this is the 20% of customers that are probably not going to come back, that leave the 1-star reviews, that going to call your customer service, are pretty rapidly going to send back your orders. So everything that's kind of making life harder for merchants, it's happening with those 20%. So if you are able, with your post-purchase experience, to do a better job for these 20%, you're creating a lot of value for the merchant. And this can have different dimensions. One is obviously happier customers. Yeah, something went wrong, but we handled it gracefully, so they can trust us the next time around. And also kind of reduce customer interactions, reduce returns. So there's a lot of benefits merchants can get from this if they get this right. So what does it mean to get it right? Is if there are 25 pitfalls, there's 25 things that go wrong. There's probably 25 things that the customer should know and understand, and for them to calibrate what's happening with their orders. So and that's where the granularity matters. So you have to basically be granular, saying, hey, okay, this is what happened to your order for this particular carrier. If it's not delivered the first time, they're going to show up the next day, or it's going to be redirected. Please give it a moment until we give you the information around. So there's a lot of details. So the mistakes a lot of merchants make, oh yeah, there was an issue with the order. This is apologies, wait for the next update. If you send this notification, they're going to be terrified. As a end customer, they're going to say, okay, I'm not going to kind of get it now. There's something really, really bad happening. They call customer service. So what we advocate is, if you send those notifications, and you should, if something goes wrong, make sure that it is a very clear communication on what the customer needs to do next, what he can expect, or she, and to really take away the need for them to be worried and call customer service or build up negative impression of the merchant. So one big example where notifications can go wrong is, for example, when a parcel was delivered to a neighbor. So a lot of merchants say, oh, that's the final delivery. We send them the delivery confirmation email, and job is done. So the consumer receives that confirmation email to then realize, I don't have the parcel. So, and then, okay, then they get worried, call customer service. Okay, what's happening? It was delivered to the neighbor. And then obviously not so much an issue, but you just created a lot more friction for the customer than was necessary. So what you should have done is say, hey, your parcel was delivered to the neighbor, please collect it whenever convenient. So you just tweak the notification a little bit, make it a little bit more specific on what the situation is, and you create a lot more value. And this is true for the other 25 pitfalls as well, where being granular, understanding how the carrier is operating, what's happening to the shipment, and communicate that at that level of granularity. I think that's where the power of a good post-purchase experience lies. And I think this is what we try to do as Parcel Perform, to put as much emphasis on as possible, because you can create a lot of value, and you create a lot of customers that have a smooth experience despite those pitfalls happening to them.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know if you can confirm this, but from our experience with different tracking statuses of carriers, we often see that in the front end on the tracking page, the status is something very generic, but then in the background on the API level, actually you have so many different sub options of the status that are not visible to the recipient, but that you could definitely receive from the carrier if you looked into the data and if you were actually checking what the exact reason for this exception in the delivery is. And that's usually what in our view kind of creates the friction, that the information is not the same. You don't have the same visibility if you're a recipient or the sender, basically.
No, and usually all those pieces of information are important from a logistics point of view, because something happens to the parcel, and but the question is, does the end customer have to care? Is this relevant for them? Oh yeah, we missed a cross-docking kind of event at this level. In most cases, the way we look at it is, what's the likelihood if this event occurs that the parcel is going to be late?
Yeah.
So if the percentage is lower than 20%, then we're saying, okay, yeah, nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
If it's higher than 1, then obviously you have to communicate the delay and say, hey, apologies, this happened. We'll focus on this. Maybe you have a concession, kind of a voucher code. But nevertheless, I think it's interpreting it, and every carrier is different. So they might be sending the same event, but for one carrier, it means, okay, it's going to be 3 days later. For the other carrier, it means it still arrives on the same day. So I think that's why we educate to look at every carrier, how they operate, what data they provide to the merchants, and kind of craft a post-purchase experience on the top of that. Because there's no one size fits all, one solution for everyone. I think it's really kind of looking in those details and making sure that you take the right decisions for your customer.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. Cool. Then I would say maybe let's move on to the next block, because I think right now in a lot of our merchants' minds, the topic peak season is very hot. Is there anything that you would say is unique in how you would suggest handling peak in terms of post-purchase experience? Is it more difficult? Are there things to keep in mind? How would you suggest e-commerce retailers handle this season when things are very, very busy and every little detail matters, maybe even more than during regular times?
No, so I think what we have seen in the past is, when I think the peak season hit and everyone was growing like crazy in e-commerce, a few merchants kind of experienced a lot of surprise of like the volume that's going to hit them. So I think by now, I think we have a lot more stability in the market, so we understand what peak season is going to look like. How much volume are we going to ship? And I think from a merchant perspective, is creating visibility across their logistic partners and also customers from an expectation point of view. Hey, this is what's going to happen. So every customer who orders on Black Friday or Cyber Monday is probably realizing, okay, that they're not the only ones placing an order on that day. So you as a merchant, you get away with a longer delivery time, because customers understand they just got an extra discount, so it's not a big deal. And usually this is technically preparing for Christmas, so if it's a day later, it's still going to be on time for Christmas. So therefore, I think what we advocate is being very transparent with customers and carriers, and hey, this is what's going to happen. Maybe it takes a day or two longer to get there, but I think you usually don't have an issue with end customers. This is, however, different if you get closer to Christmas, because there it matters that it arrives. So I think there's a lot of like communication around cutoffs for Christmas. Those are the EDDs that you better not miss. I think if you miss that, there's a good chance that this is going to come back. So I think that's where we're looking at peak season. There's usually two parts of it. The first part is the kind of Black Friday, Cyber Monday. I think everyone tries to drag it out now, because they also realize having kind of 20% of the annual sales in one day is not smart thing to do. So
Yeah.
a lot of people say, oh yeah, we start our Black Friday discounts 2 weeks earlier, because first of all, the earlier you start, the more kind of demand you capture, and you also drag out the delivery over this period of time. So we're seeing that as an effect, and obviously every geography has its own habits. Let's say here in Asia, we have like Double 11 is the big sales day. I think kind of in Europe and the US, it's a kind of Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and there's a lot of creativity from the merchant side to also kind of move away from that one day of extra sales. And I think we will see that kind of more and more. And the whole period from then until Christmas is usually a very good sales season. Where we put a lot of emphasis and recommend customers to really spend time on is the kind of Christmas cutoff. And that's also to understand with the carriers, okay, what's the last handover where the carrier can guarantee things. If you get this wrong with customers, I think they're not going to be happy. And that is usually around also making the right promises at the page, at checkout. I think that's where we feel if you don't get this right, I think you have a lot of unhappy customers, and this could be customers that might be coming back normally, but if you screw this up, maybe they don't.
Yeah. I think those are some really good insights. And as you're saying, that the recommendation of extending the peak as much as possible is not just smart from a logistics point of view, but also from a maximizing revenue kind of point of view. I think it will be interesting this year again. I also saw already last year, it was Black Week or Black Weeks rather than just Black Friday, Cyber Monday. For us in fulfillment, of course, it's also better to stretch it out a little bit. Otherwise, the Monday is just a completely crazy day where we sometimes see 20 times the sales of regular days. So that's obviously also a challenge for us then. Cool. Very, very nice examples. I would say let's move towards the end of the process, right? So you have the purchase has been completed. You've had a great post-purchase experience. Still, then there are some returns that might come back from the end customer. Is there anything from your side that you would recommend in terms of the returns process? Is there also something that retailers can optimize there?
No, I think in returns, we have come a long way. Kind of when we started, returns was kind of the necessary evil. So the harder you make it for customers, the more money you make. So it's like, okay, if you want to return things, go to this dubious website, enter like a form with 50 fields. If you make one mistake, you have to start from scratch. So I think a lot of merchants were very creative to make it really difficult. But I think the industry has moved on and saying, hey, returns is part of a normal e-commerce experience. So it happens, and it's not necessarily anyone's fault. And if you make it very hard, I think that's a sure way of losing customers. So I think everyone is now on the mindset, hey, this is actually a value creation opportunity where making this a seamless and easy process kind of increases the probability for the customer to come back. Because I think what we have seen is if the customer said to return something, he or she will make it happen. So if you make it harder, they're just going to be very, very kind of upset by the end of this process. So the easier you make it, the more automated it is, the less they have to wait for the communication with customer service, the more it's like a self-service website with lots of options, I think the better. So that level of predictability, I think, is important. And I think what we advocate is usually you want to do your return in the same place where you tracked your parcel in the first place, because from a customer, those two things are linked. A lot of merchants send customers to a very different portal with a different website. So that's kind of not necessarily a very customer-centric way of handling the process, but ideally the customer can return their products right where they tracked it. They can get all the information they need in one place for this process to be as seamless as possible. I think one element that we have seen that has gotten more and more attention is how do you do the logistics side of things around returns? Because two trends are kind of interesting, or three trends, I would say. The first one is not everyone has a printer at home or kind of wants to print anything. So I think there's the push towards QR codes, so that makes life easier for customers. Because why would you print something these days except for returns labels? Yeah? So the second option that was quite popular initially was the pre-printed return label. So that kind of was a great idea. It's very customer centric, makes it easy for customer, but has a few very important kind of disadvantages. One is the kind of environmental footprint, because for every order, whether returned or not, you print a lot of extra pages. And the second thing is you as a merchant have no idea what's going to come back and when. And it's very difficult for you to enforce any return policies. If you say, oh yeah, please only return in 14 days. So what happens if you get, after 2 months, you get this thing back? There's nothing you can do. You can't send it back. So you're going to accept the return. So there's very little kind of a merchant can do to enforce return policies and without creating a massive customer experience gap. So I think we're seeing more and more merchants move away from this and rather keep it a simple kind of QR code based process where they can select kind of the carrier. They don't have to print anything, just bring it back, and it works. So I think that's what we're seeing, because then you have visibility about the shipment, the returning warehouse knows exactly what is coming when. You can relist the products on the web shop. If you trust the customer and the item value is not too high, you can refund early and get the customers to come back and shop early. So I think there's a lot of benefits you have from there. And I think the last trend we have seen is particular on the choice of kind of drop-off points, because of course you don't want to pick up the parcel. It might be convenient from a customer perspective, but not really, because then you have to coordinate time, you have to sit at home, have to wait for that kind of delivery company pass by. If they're late, you're kind of upset. So I think we're seeing drop-off being the favorite kind of return method from a customer convenience point of view, but also from a cost point of view. But the challenge around that is, okay, not everyone lives directly next to a drop-off point of your favorite carrier. So every carrier has a different network, and every consumer has a preference. And that's not necessarily because it's closest. It might just be on the way to work or somewhere entirely different. So I think what we have seen, what adds a lot of value is to give customers the full flexibility on where they want to return. So the more drop-off location you offer them, the better. Because then you can maximize your own utility, saying, okay, tomorrow I want to go shopping. I go to this place anyway. I know there's a particular drop-off point for this carrier. I drop it off there. So I want a QR code for that particular carrier. So, and I think that's one of the kind of convenience elements that I think a lot of merchants are still missing. So that you're either logged in with one carrier, and that drop-off point might be really, really inconvenient from a customer. So they're not going to appreciate that. Second, it is kind of a little bit of a clumsy process. So what we're seeing with some customers before they work with us is, please choose your carrier, and then you can choose the drop-off point. But maybe they don't know, or they don't know which one has. I go shopping there tomorrow, but I don't know which carrier has a drop-off point there. So I think making that process easier. So we show you the map, okay, where you can drop it off. You pick the point, and then we give you the QR code that fits that point. I think that's kind of where you maximize customer utility. And I think if you can make it simple, very easy process, QR code based, ideally refund right after the parcel has been dropped off. So you turn around the volume, the money as much as possible. I think this is where I think returns can get a lot easier going forward. And I think a lot more merchants are taking those principles on board, because they see this not necessarily as a necessary evil of e-commerce, but more of kind of an opportunity to build a longer lasting relationship with the customer. And yeah, that may not be necessary for all merchants. If you sell a product that a customer only buys every 5 years, so it doesn't really matter. But if you have fashion or kind of other products that where you have the opportunity to sell more, I think this returns capability is a crucial point for maximizing customer value.
Yeah, definitely agreed. I think, as you're saying, it depends a bit on the product category, but in general, we also see this trend quite a lot, that you don't want to really add the label into the box, because that is, as you already mentioned, right? You're missing a lot of the data and all those insights. But on the other hand, you also don't want to make it a huge challenge for the customer, because at the end of the day, you want them to come back to you and shop again. Cool. That's a really, really cool insights. Thanks a lot, Arne. It's been really great to chat to you. I would say we can slowly wrap it up. Maybe to summarize from my point of view, I think what's been really interesting for me was this happy path that you described. I think that's a really cool way to look at it, and to really think, okay, how do I want the 80% of orders to perceive the experience? I'm not sure anymore how you called the other 20% again. Did you have a name?
No, we call that delivery pitfalls. So we
The
can
pitfalls.
call it unhappy path or delivery pitfalls. I think, and that's where a lot of merchants should put more emphasis on, because that's where things go wrong. And so that's a good way for us to frame it. And it's also good to mentally optimize both parts differently. And I think that's a little bit our approach to post-purchase.
Yeah, and I really like that, because I think that's what the tendency of many retailers might be, to say, okay, well, we don't want any of those pitfalls or unhappy paths, but that's not the reality, right? There's always going to be those post-purchase experiences where something goes wrong along the route, but then I think how you manage it and how you manage the customer expectations proactively is really the key to making it a good customer experience in the end. So yeah, I think it was super, super insightful. I think also kind of the thoughts you had around peak and how to stretch it out. I think that's also something that I really think is a good way to look at it. Right, you don't want to put everything on one day, but you really want to make sure that, again, you manage expectations and you make sure that the customer knows when they will receive the order. But not necessarily try to squeeze everything into 1 or 2 days of the year. And yeah, last but not least, the returns. I think that's also a super, super relevant topic, and making that as scalable as possible, as smooth as possible, and reducing the manual touch points, because I think that's also still something that we see where retailers tend to have this process where you send an email, and that's just not what customers want to see in their returns process nowadays. So those examples were also really, really nice to hear.
No, awesome. No, I think from my side, I think we have come a long way since we started Parcel Perform in the customer experience. I think it's also exciting what's probably going to be next. I think there's a lot of innovative topics coming up, particularly on the customer experience and customer kind of service side of things. I think there's one thing we didn't talk about is the customer service evolution with all these agents and Gen AI that's coming in. What a lot of merchants now see, instead of reducing Wismo calls with all these agents, we all of a sudden have more. Because obviously the easier you make it to reach out, I think the more calls you get. Or if you don't have to wait 5 minutes on the hotline, but get an answer right away, a lot more calls actually happen. So I think what we're seeing, there's a lot of more opportunities to engage customers around also these kind of delivery pitfalls, to explain things, to explain these kind of the impact of the kind of delivery process on their order. I think that's a huge opportunity for merchants to not just deflect the communication, which was, I think, the idea in the past, where everything was kind of very expensive. Every touch point with customer service was $5 to $7, and so you really try to get rid of them. I think right now there's a lot of opportunities, also use these interaction points to create value, comfort, and be proactive. So I think that's one of the areas where we're putting a lot of emphasis at Parcel Perform. To enable that, facilitate that process, and also kind of really make it easier for customers in the future. So I'm pretty confident consumers can expect a much better post-purchase experience in the future, and we'll hope to contribute to that.
Awesome. That's a really cool outlook. Thanks so much for sharing that. And we're looking forward to seeing how things develop. I think, if the numbers are true from those studies, right, I think there is still a certain gap to fill between customer experience and what retailers perceive. So definitely some exciting areas to still work on. Cool. Then thanks so much, Arne. It's been really great chatting to you. We will have another podcast episode coming soon, so stay tuned. Thanks, Arne, for joining today. Have a great day and talk soon.
Thanks a lot for having me. Really enjoyed the conversation, look forward to speaking soon.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Just in Time, your go-to podcast for all things e-commerce logistics. Don't forget to share today's episode with your colleagues. Remember, timing is everything. For more information about Byrd's tech-driven e-commerce fulfillment services in Europe, visit getbyrd.com now.